Good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melka's application team, and we're doing our Design Shop Talk. Again, we do these on a weekly basis to answer any questions you might have. Next week, we'll be doing it on Thursday. But for today, if you have any questions, please type them in on the comments. We're live on both Facebook and YouTube, so type them in on there. I can't see things that get messaged while I'm live, like a private message, so make sure you type them in on the comments, and I'll try to get them answered while we're talking. Good morning, Gina. It's nice to hear from you. All right, so watch is bothering me, so I'm going to take it off. That hurt. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so let's jump into what questions we have to start with. All right, so good morning, Gabby. So one question we had is, well, how do we use the auto applique feature? Okay, that's cool. Let's digitize some applique. So just for grins, I did just a vector heart. So whenever you're going to digitize something, you have to start off by deciding what art you're going to do. So here I just picked a vector. You bring it in. For the vectors, you can go grab them from Illustrator or Corel. Just do a copy and paste into DesignShop. You can insert, you can open them however you want. Okay, I happen to just insert this and save it as an OFM, so I'd have it. So I've got my vector here. Now when you're doing your applique, the applique tool is right here. Okay, so we have a few options. One is if I just click on that, the applique, it's essentially a wizard where it's going to walk you through the steps necessary. And if you're ever lost as to what it's asking you to do, look down here at the bottom of the screen. It's going to give you kind of hints on what it's expecting from you. So here, input first point. So really what this is asking me for is, hey, trace the shape. Okay, so you would just use your left clicks and right clicks around the shape. Is this the fastest way? No, I'm going to show you multiple. So once you get to a point where you want to just connect the last point you clicked to the first point you drew, hit enter. Oops, it'll close the shape, and if you don't wind your mouse around everywhere. Now look at the bottom. So it's expecting something else. Input hole or hit enter to input entry point. I don't have a hole in this thing, so I'm just going to hit enter. Poof, now we have an applique. Okay, so that's with tracing it. I'm just going to drag that off to the side and show you a kind of a quicker way. Okay, so if I take my same art, so rather than tracing it, if I select it, I can then hold my shift key down and again click on the applique input method. Since this is a vector, I can just do shift, click, and that same work is done without having to go trace it. So super fast. Once you have the applique up here, now it's a matter of playing with the settings, essentially to suit your personal style and preferences. All right, so if I go into the properties of my applique, let's go into this one. All right, first off, that green is kind of blinding for me, so I'm just going to change it because I don't want to look at the bright green. You don't have to change it. It's kind of irrelevant. That's going to be what fabric or what material you're going to use. It's just simulating it on the screen for you. Okay, right here you have your tack down. That's going to be your zigzag, and you'll notice if you see where the placement stitch is, it's really close to the edge of your cover stitch, your top stitching here. So that's great if you're using something like a cutter or some sort of cutter to pre-cut your fabrics, whether it's, you know, one of the roll-end where you cut out the fabric, or a laser, a silhouette, a Cricut. I mean, however you want to pre-cut fabrics, even if you're, you know, printing it by paper, tracing it and cutting it by hand. If you're going to pre-cut them, then having it, you know, really close on the satin stitch over top, that'll be fine. But if you're cutting in the hoop, what I find anyway is when I trim close to my placement stitch here, my actual fabric is still somewhere over here, so it doesn't get covered. So if that's the case, you know, you would want to change these things, these percentages, based on your, you know, how you work. Somewhere between 60-40 or 50-50 is usually safe, because you can usually cut close enough to that line if you're doing it in the hoop to make a difference. All right, so that would be the first thing I'd change. The other is if you want your zigzag to be wider, 30 is pretty good. Your satin stitch over the top, if you want that to be wider, 40 is pretty good. I mean, you can go up to 45 if you want. A nice wide satin stitch covering it. Okay, so the only other thing is it's going to do a running stitch as a placement, and then you can have an applique, you can lay your fabric down, and then it will run the rest. If you want a color change after the zigzag stitch, you can turn that on here, and now you'll have 3 color changes. You'll have your running stitch, your zigzag, and then your cover stitch, which is the top, what your customers see. Now, again, with each of these, you can always go into each step and play with the properties, right? So for your top stitching, well, maybe you want to have a zigzag underlay. Okay, I prefer something more absolute, like say 7 points from the edge. 7 to 10 points is good. Or maybe you want to add a little pull compensation. So all of these are things that you can modify for each layer of your applique. And that's really all there is to it for using this applique tool. It's a really simple tool. It walks you through all the steps. And then you can modify each of the things as you need. Now, when you program this on your machine, you would just put applique stops wherever you want the machine to come out. Is it possible to add a stop command to the design file? So so it's not a stop command per se. The color change is the same thing, particularly with the DST. So you would just add a color change and that will act as a stop. If you're running OFM files, you can go into, where is it? Project. Is it properties? Nope, not properties. Cancel that. Right clicked, project. I can go into project, into the OS, and I can program stuff in here if I want to, and program the different, color changes. I can program the color sequences, add stops and whatnot, but this is saved within the OFM, and if you're running DSTs, that's not going to help. So with your DSTs, the stop is just done as a color change. Okay. All right. Any other questions on applique before I jump to the next one? I don't see anything typed in. Let me check Facebook. There we go. All right. So let's see what else we have. All right. How do we make this look more like a satin stitch rather than a fill? Okay. So first off, it's going to depend on the size of your font, whether it's going to be practically done as a satin. So I just picked a font that was scripty and made it big. So this is actually pretty huge. It's, close to 3.5 inches tall and 8.2 wide. It's showing up as a fill. All right. Now, if I take the same thing and all I do is a copy and paste and move it down and I make it a lot smaller, you'll see, if I zoom in on that, right now it's set as a stitch type fill. If I change it to satin, now I've got my satin stitches. However, while I can force something to be satin, there's a practical limit to how wide a satin stitch can be, and essentially safely stitched. The larger this get, the larger these individual stitches from one side to the other are. And if they get too large, what's that going to do for you? It's going to be prone to, like if you've got a pen, going in a pocket, it's going to snag those threads and damage it, and that's no fun, right? So different things you can do on these is, one, if you're using fonts, you can always change it to a flat fill, which that's not what you're asking about of how to make it look more satin, but that makes it a nice flat fill across there. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. Now, one that I personally like to use a lot is to go into the top stitching, and right here where it says presets, if you change that to auto, what it does is it kind of gets you as long as you can and puts these little splits down there so that it looks, it was originally done to approximate a satin stitch where it's not practical to do it. So I use this one a lot. I just like the look of it. I think talking to some of the guys at Milka, they were kind of giggling at how much I really love it, but I like it a lot. So I use this quite a bit of just setting this to auto, and that will give you the kind of a less of a fill look, more of a satin look, but without making those stitches super long. And when they're super long, bad things happen over time, right? So that's what I would suggest. Okay. Any question? None typed in. All right. How can I make a nice decorative underground? So that's kind of like a decorative fill is how I'm interpreting that. Okay, so if I want to do a decorative fill, first off I got to create the fill. So if I hold down this button, the very first one is complex fill. I can draw whatever shape I want. I'm just going to draw a rectangle to keep it simple. There we go. So I got a rectangle. Let's make it a different color and put it in 3D. All right, so I've got a basic fill. Not very exciting at the moment. So Kendra, you asked about my auto split. The auto split, I sew it out a lot and I really like the look of it. Depending on what design you have, shortcuts. All right, we'll talk about that. So depending on the actual size of the lettering, it can be a little bit dense in these areas, but for the most part, they've just sewn out for me. There's very few where I actually have to go and modify it. For the most part, they just sew beautifully. A lot of shortcut keys. Yes, there are. I'm trying to think. There is a list of them. They're on. I think Scott did a video about shortcuts and the ones he programs specifically for design accelerators. You can always come over and create your own under Tool Accelerator Editor. And under here, let's say if you want to center something all the time, you can create your own shortcut and assign it to there. You know, things like that. So you can create your own shortcuts for different commands. I try to keep my hand in my lap, so I tell you when I'm doing things, I'll try to be a little more cognizant of that, so I can call out what shortcuts I'm doing. Okay. Oh, when I started this fill, I hit the escape key to cancel it. So that's the one thing I did. Oh, cool. They did put a link. So we've got a link of shortcuts coming for you of the accelerator keys. So you'll have that available. All right. So we were talking about changing this to a decorative fill. So if I take my shape and real quick, since I did it fast, the hotkey, if you will, is actually just to create the rectangle. As I create the fill, and rather than drawing the points, I'm going to say select automatic input rectangle, left click, there it is. And then I hit escape so that the item is selected, and then I just change the color by clicking on one of the colors in the color palette over here. So that's how I created this. Now from here, we want to change it to a decorative. So I'm going to just select the shape. Anytime you want to modify something, click the shape first. Then I'm going to drag this down to decorative, and there's a decorative fill. So I'm going to put it, I'll leave it in 3D and let's make it black so it's easier to see. There. It's kind of busy, but there we go. So that's one. Now the patterns, there's a bunch of patterns that come with the come automatic to the software. You can change them and play with them as you see fit. It'll recalculate them out. Now notice you've got this, I don't know, I call them handles. I'm sure they have a technical name that I'm unaware of. I apologize, I call them handles. But you can drag these things around to change the look of how the pattern sews out. Okay, not that you want to do it like this, but you can change them that way. You can come into the properties. If you right click and go to properties, down here is the same thing, you're just doing it by number. Okay, so you can go change how it's going to sew out, which pattern you want to use. Now I know some folks ask, well, the patterns are great, but how do I know what any of these look like? Okay, that's right here. You can easily see them by clicking on the select automatic custom shape input. So this guy here, and then come down to decorative stitches, and here are all the ones I currently have. So I can see what each individual one is without having to go and click on each one individually. Okay, so let's say I want to do the pebbles. So I'm going to change this one to pebbles and hit apply. Okay, so now I've got my pebbles. And what if I want a hole in the middle of this? Like I want to do a trapunto type knockdown or something with on a towel so that the raised little towel things will get a monogram letter. Okay, well, I'm going to hit escape because I clicked the wrong key. Select that, click insert hole, and left click. I'm going to draw an ugly M. I'm freehanding it, and it's going to be ugly, and I apologize, but you guys will get the idea. Alright, I eyeballed all that. Hit enter. I have an ugly M now drawn in my shape. So you can add holes. If I want to move that hole somewhere else, I click the shape, click on the hole. So now that you see the box around it, I can move it. If I want to rotate it, I click on that box again, and now I can rotate my shape. So it's really versatile. It's pretty easy to use. Okay, so you can add as many holes as you want. You can change that underlay, you know, that decorative fill to be whatever pattern you want. You can create your own patterns. So where's my horse? I think I have my horse. Yep, there's my horse. This is one I created a while back. So I can do, you know, you can create your own little patterns. So decoratives are so versatile. You can use them as fills. You can use them for lines. They're a lot of fun. I use them quite a bit. Okay. So I'd be interested in the best way to digitize shadow shades, color gradients. So Nate did a video a while back. I'll see if we can get you the link for it. It was on blending, where he actually had a picture of a horse and was showing how to do the different blends and how to get the fur and the different colors on there. So there are quite a few videos that we've done on that. I don't know that we've done any on portraits per se, but we've done some on fur and animals and that sort of thing. So I'll see if we can get you those videos. They're pretty in-depth and nice to kind of go through the different, you know, how you pick the right saturation in the colors when you're doing blends, what the importance of, you know, changing your stitch length so the threads kind of nest together and give you that more blended look. So there's a lot of discussion on those sorts of things. There's also on the Melco blog a nice article that was written a few years ago now that, again, it's a written article. So if you want to read something that talks about all the things that go into cleanly doing a blend. So I highly recommend checking out those videos and see if those help answer your questions. And I'll talk to the guys and see if we can get, if someone wants to take on doing a portrait, so that we can kind of show that to you in detail. Portraits are a lot of fun, but they take a long time to do, at least for me. I guess I end up spending more time sitting there changing colors, trying to figure out what colors I think would look best, pulling them out, taking them outside, staring at them. So I spend a lot of time just trying to pick the correct colors for the application. Okay, so those were the questions we had typed in. Let me see. So we did get you a link, and we're putting those in the comments for both the the accelerator keys, as well as presentation link to all the presentations that have been done on blending. So be sure to check those out. Yeah, I'm going to quick look and see if there's any other questions that were typed in. Okay, YouTube. Where are my YouTube comments? There they are. Okay, I don't see any others typed anywhere else. So I hope these sessions are helpful for you. Be sure to send in your questions. I do post on Facebook usually the day to 2 days before these sessions are held, polling for any questions. So send them in. You can email applications@melco.com. And we'll get your questions added and see if we can get them answered. Oh, Facebook, there's a new comment. Let's go see. What do we have? Is there some way to make custom fills? Something that looks like a wave. Yeah, so custom fills are just done as decoratives. Okay. Where is Design Shop? Here we go. And I thought there was a wave one at some point. So let's see. Well, here, let's just go do this. So a few things you can do. If you want just the stitches to ripple, one thing you can play with is if I delete my stitch direction, if I hold this down, I can just insert a curved stitch direction, and I can go add curved stitch directions along there to kind of make the stitches wind around. All right, so you have that as an option if all you're wanting to do is you know, follow along a different shape. Now, if what you're really wanting to do is kind of have a running stitch going in a, you know, back and forth in a different pattern, for those, you would just, you know, create a decorative and then apply it. Prit, you just asked, how about option keys for tools? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Do you mean what are the hotkeys for all these that are pre set, like Control T for lettering? Right here are all the preset accelerators that are already defined. Okay, so that's where under each of these drop downs, if there is an accelerator key already assigned as a standard, you can find them here. So that'll give you the hotkeys for the keyboards. So let's see. I'm not sure if there used to be like a shell or something that looked like a wave. Well, here, you can draw one. So let's see. I can okay, so I drew that. I can go to Save Custom Shape. I think you guys have all seen me do this before. I always overwrite test until I like it. That way, if I hate it, I'm not creating junk in the software. So I'm going to add my stitch direction back. And let's change this to a decorative fill. And I'm going to change it to test and see what we have. Okay, that's not bad. So then you can play with its spacing and how it, you know, how it looks by moving these guys around. Some of those I shouldn't be moving around. But anyway, so you can create any custom that you want. All right. Frank, you'll try to send a picture later. Okay, cool. Alberto. I opened a DST file in DesignShop and adjusted the colors. Once I opened it in OS, it's one solid color. How can I change this? So within DesignShop, you change the colors. If you save it as an OFM, the colors will stay. If you save it back as a DST, the colors don't stay. When you go to OS, it's going to open with whatever the previous design that you sewed with it. It's going to show up with those colors. So you really, all you have to do is go into the color sequence and set the color sequence that you want. And because it's not going to change the file from having 5 colors to 1 color. But if all you have in your color sequence set is 1 color, it's going to appear as if it's just one solid blob, right? So you just need to go into color sequence and color it appropriately. Once it's all colored, then it will show up right. I'm wanting to do European symbols. Are there certain fonts? Yeah. So if you go look at the code sheets for the fonts, and what do I mean by code sheets? These things. So when I hover over a font, you see the little box thing that pops out to the right? Those are the code sheets, and those will show you which characters have already been digitized for that particular font. So you can see there are a whole lot of characters on a lot of these. No, and ask about similar keys as direction tool. You press the command key and draw the direction so you can limit the column length. Yeah, you're talking about for, all right, just a sec. So back to the European keys. So like block 2, that font does not include all the characters. So if you're wanting to use the special characters, you can't use that. But all of these, it's included. Now, how do you actually get to them? Well, that you can use the code sheet down here to select the character you want. You know, copy and paste. Oops, I didn't copy the right one. But you can take these and paste them in. If you know the right commands, you can type them in, but I usually just go find them on the character map within Windows, do a copy and paste is how I use them. Okay, let's see, what else? All right, I don't see any other questions. And I apologize, direction tool, so that's the stitch direction. You press a command key to draw out the direction to limit the column length. I know you can limit column length by, so if I'm drawing a single line center, left click, enter, and then from here I can trace the column width, and that will give me the column width there. And then if I don't like that, I can always either modify it by adjusting this guy here, or I can do it by number up in the toolbar box. Or if I right click and go to properties or double click on it, under the single line, I can also adjust the width of my shape. So all of those are ways that I can affect the width. Let's see. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any others typed in. Okay, well, I hope these are helpful for you. So be sure to let us know how we can help, what questions you have, and we'll try to get them answered. I will be back next Thursday. School's almost starting here. We got 2 more weeks so of the kids being around making noise, but then we're back to school, so everyone stay safe. And I will be back next week to see what we can talk about. All right. Have a fantastic weekend, and till next week, have fun sewing.